See who's talking.
Hmm.
No.
All right. So
Can't
let me play
control.
around with Twitch real quick.
This is annoying. Why do you got knockoff? Like, get normal headphones.
Yeah,
bought these at
put these
Cheap
$5
ass fucking
headphones.
headphones.
Bro, I bought these at the fucking.
You don't have any other
airport.
ones? Galaxies or nothing? Like, I have
Galaxy.
mine are at work. I'm pretty. They might actually. They might be upstairs. See, run upstairs real quickly and see. Or here, I'll run upstairs real quick.
How the fuck am I gonna
Move.
This seems super sensitive.
Let me talk to them over it. Is Logan joining us?
No.
Figure out your headphones in 5 minutes. Jank gas.
This is not good. Connections.
Not working. Just.
Devices. No.
Oh, fucking off.
I have no idea. I really have no idea how to fix that. Guess it's fucked. That's nice. All right.
Look at your phone. Where's your phone at? Your phone.
Oh, that was a good stretch.
Go get those two.
Almost blacked out on that one.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. David, you dipshit. Oh my god.
Oh
He's
my
retarded.
god. Hey, calm down with we're live on Twitch. Tyler.
Say something.
Say something.
Okay, wait. And say something.
Say something.
Oh, this is gonna work. He can literally it doubles over to him.
Oh, you're leashing up to him? That's cute.
I got you. It works. Or those does that with I mean I can't really connect. Oh. Do they have an run upstairs? There's a on top of the refrigerator. There's an double aux. Go see it.
I need you to twist your
I'm
camera.
gonna see if I can just connect to my phone on this.
Okay.
See if you can center you both.
You go grab the double aux real quick.
Come
just in
over
case
this
doesn't
way.
work. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Come over this way.
You guys don't look like brothers at all. Is he still trying this? Alright, let me are we good on time?
5 minutes. Can you hear it? Say something.
Say something.
Well,
You
now I
got
have
it?
to go into Discord.
Oh. Now can you hear anything?
Can you hear anything?
Can you hear any of us?
Any of me
Anything?
talking? No? Fuck.
Yeah, here. Put
All
this in.
I'll be right back. I'm gonna use the restroom real quick.
Go get the double connector thing.
I just told you I'm not getting out of this way. It's up on top of the fridge.
Um,
Andele, vámonos arriba. Oh wait. Yeah, do that. Get it. Get it. Let me tell you something.
This? Here. So should I this in whatever the Bluetooth?
This is not what I wanted you to grab, but sure, we'll try that. It was a Bluetooth or not Bluetooth, a fucking. That's not it. It'll work. It's a fucking like a USB or an aux jack. That's a double N aux input. Not this. It's up on top of the refrigerator.
I looked on top.
Look on the right side. I just put it up that bitch. Sponsored by Old Elk. I wish. Give me it. Let's see if this works.
All right, hold on a second. I'm gonna go ahead and take us into BRB
Plug
to
it
bring
in.
in the
They're gonna
bot.
Here it is.
Say something. Say something. Twist it, bop it, slap it, smoke it.
Okay.
Say one thing.
It's one
Said,
thing. Yep.
One thing.
All right. We're good. All we need.
Well, it's a good thing we got it.
A minute to go. All right.
Yeah.
We're talking about your reactor thing and then marijuana and chemistry. Sure. Hell yes. We're getting scientific today, bitches. Did you get your glass?
Sure.
Which one did you want?
Aren't those mine?
Romcast, yeah. This one's mine.
Give me the one with the fucking cool guy. I want that one.
4 grain.
Yeah. Does it taste like trash? Is it literally just a cool bottle, Paul?
You're a cool guy.
The pour you can put on any of them.
Is it just a cool bottle? Does it taste like trash? Answer me.
The Rumcast is my favorite.
Answer me. Does
The
it taste like?
Rumcast.
Does that one taste like trash?
Just tell him it tastes like
No, I
trash.
drank the most.
Okay, then I'll try it.
Does it taste like trash?
You're like, it's almost empty. All right, I'm having an issue with sound. Test. I don't know what's going on.
I could still only hear out of this one here.
But how does David sound? Can you hear him?
Mic auxiliary.
Mic auxiliary, that's what I heard.
Yeah, he can still hear us, and so can the stream. Let me go over to me real quick, and yeah, it's picking up me talk real quick.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
We're good. All right, cool.
Okay.
I heard it for a split second.
You're good.
Did it drop
So-
out?
No.
On this side. I'll just do it with one ear, my right ear. I'll just.
Turn the volume all the way up.
That's what I did. It's
Okay.
cranked.
Chaotic is in the chat. Let's make this like Paul's hairline and run this thing back.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
Fuck me, fuck you.
Hey, I have hair though, so eat me.
Did everyone get the warning that this is an adults only Twitch stream now? Because we had to set it because of Twitch's new guidelines? If you pull up Twitch, you have to accept that we're going to be ingesting alcoholic beverages and or other substances. All right, Paul, would you care to take it in?
Absolutely. You ready?
Let me crack this beer real quick.
How do I sound? Do we sound good? I was just double checking.
Mama's watching, can't see David.
Can you hear me?
Are you? Yeah, we can hear you.
David.
We can hear you.
Well, there we go. All right.
Wait. So did you just say mom's watching?
Ma's watching. Yeah,
Hi,
David.
Mom. I'm gonna be talking about drugs. Love you.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, whenever the hell you're listening to us. This is Drunk Discussion, and we're your hosts. I'm Paul.
And I'm Connery.
Today we have my brother is joining us. David is an analytical chemist.
Traveling analytical chemist. Yes.
And either way, he's been wanting to get on the podcast for a minute. And I was like, you know what? What better way and day to talk about marijuana than today? So, Connery, how was your week? We didn't even talk much first.
No, we've both been very busy. I've been with work and TikTok and all of that. And yeah, it's been good. So yesterday, I started celebrating the birthday weekend. And I don't know what I did. Oh yeah, I went live on TikTok.
Out?
No, I didn't drink. We went ahead and we did a lifting. Lauren and I lifted on TikTok live, and then we went ahead and a few hours later finished waxing my back on live.
I did see that, and that looked painful, sir. But I mean,
yeah.
Hey, you know what? I've always thought about waxing it too, because shaving just doesn't work. It comes back, it's itchier.
This morning I learned that even though you can lift a shit ton of weight, when it comes to rock climbing, your finger strength is important.
Yeah. So what are you drinking on today then?
A good old can of Bud Right.
Well, we're drinking some old elk. We got 3 different kinds here. David went with the 4 grain. So did I. So got the gold little puker out again, you know. A little pukey.
Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about today. Of course, we're talking about marijuana, the scientific background of marijuana. We're talking about a new superconductor that's kind of raising eyebrows amongst the community, and a few other things. Of course, we're expecting drunk tangents. That's to be expected. So if we don't talk about something, it means we're having a great time. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and roll said intro.
1, 2, 3.
I'm a type 2 civilization hipster.
Jesus is watching you, you're gonna all burn in hell. That's why Antarctica's off limits. It's just a bunch of penguins fucking each other, and it causes a chain reaction. People lose their fucking minds.
Trust me, man, I've seen some shit.
Nice to be in orbit.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine.
You should probably go get that checked and shove a finger in your bum. You're laughing, but it's already in there.
And we are back. Thank you guys so much for joining Drunk Discussions podcast. Yeah, you want to take it away, David?
David Rea, the master of marijuana. Let's hear it.
Wait, so what? Okay, all right. So first, I guess I'll give you guys a little bit of my background. I graduated top of class of Hocking College. Is first ever cannabis-oriented analytical chemistry degree. So this degree focused on testing residual solvents, pesticides, mycotoxins, heavy metals, microbial. You had to learn about every single thing that was needed in order to properly test and legally test cannabis in the state of Ohio, which not a lot of people know this, but the state of Ohio is the hardest state to test cannabis in due to the action limits of a lot of their things that they test for. For example, we have some things like mycotoxins and specific pesticides that are all the way as low as a couple parts per billion, where the same exact molecules in other states are 100 to 1,000 times higher than that. So we have to be a little bit more smart with the way we do our sample prep and everything like that, so that we actually get everything out of the actual sample. So that way everything's safe.
It's safe to consume, safe to inhale, vape,
Exactly.
ingest. all of the above.
After college, I worked at Cureleaf, which is the world's largest cannabis company. I helped set up their lab in Johnstown, Ohio. I worked on the processing side, but I also they allowed a lot of overtime, so I would also work in the cultivation side as well. I am also a operations manager for Hot Hemp. So we currently have 1,700 plants in the ground right now. They're looking absolutely beautiful. We just had a storm, and every single one of them
is send me a lot of pictures of them. It's
yeah, they're almost like 5-6 feet right now, and we still have a couple more months till harvest. So these guys are going to be absolute trees this year.
So do you so when it comes to you do like cross pollination and things like that as well to build the best strains
genetic
possible,
changes over time, like you to get the best
so
crop yield?
We actually, kind of going along with the whole chemistry route, we have a specific strain, multiple specific strains of cannabis that are what's referred to as triploids. So
what does that mean?
How do I put this in perspective? Basically, these plants have an extra chromosome. So these plants, if you want to relate it to humans, it would be like similar to like Down syndrome, things like that. But it's basically genetic modification to where Connor's losing it.
I'm sorry.
It's genetic modification to basically make the entire plant sterile. Now, what does that mean?
Makes you
basically
stupid
what
when
that
you
means
smoke
is
it.
Yeah, no.
No.
it actually has no effects on the looks and the taste and the aromas of the plant itself. But what it does do is it makes it unable to pollinate and unable to actually accept pollen from other plants. So not a lot of people know this, but cannabis is a dioecious plant. So they are male and female. And you can actually have a female plant that if you stress it enough, it will turn male and release pollen. It is a defense mechanism that is, millions and millions of years old in order to try to keep that species of plant alive.
Man,
Oh, shit.
conservatives are going to be pissed when they realize they're smoking trans weed.
Yes, yes.
So that's really cool. So I learned. I want to step back. You were talking like the parts per billion and things like that when it comes to chemicals that are found inside the plants. I didn't really learn about parts per whatever until the East Palestine train derailment when they were talking like the hydrochloride is something that's measured in parts per 100,000, which means a small amount of it is extremely dangerous to your DNA composition and a bunch of other things. So, are there any chemicals that, when you're testing it, you really kind of a red flag when it comes to, you know, that even if it's a very, very small quantity, it's something that you should not take in?
Absolutely. The big ones are heavy metals, and it depends on the pesticide. For instance, there are some pesticides that are way worse than others. There's a whole
I'm
list
gonna that
in
realm.
Ohio that are referred to as LOD pesticides, which are limit of detection. That is supposed to mean if your instrument is able to detect it at all, then it fails.
Wow.
However, there is a lot of issues going on specifically with Ohio that they didn't really say exactly what it is for LOD, so they're able to do a little bit of manipulation there. But regardless, it's still ridiculously low in comparison to everywhere else. So there is from analytical lab to analytical lab in Ohio, there is going to be different LODs because it's going to depend a lot on their analytical equipment. If they
So-
have old analytical equipment, it's going to be a much higher LOD compared to brand spanking new.
Is there any pesticides or herbicides that they use in the industry now where it's not like a non-toxic and it's not a problem for it, or is that like not exist theoretically? Because like you
So-
can wash a fruit and vegetable of pesticides and things that preserve it off. You can't really wash your weed.
Yeah, so that's when we get into a very tricky subject. And there's definitely, if you go and look, for instance, for Ohio, it is required for them to list out exactly what they spray. So if you are curious and you are a medical patient in Ohio, you can go and look and see what each different processor, cultivator, where they're getting their stuff from, and if they have anything that you might not like. But overall, there's a lot of banned pesticides, and there is a lot of action limits that are set for some of these pesticides. That, in the grand scheme of things, for the overall United States of America, we have the basically one time exposure limit. So you're going to be safe in that aspect. However, if you're doing stuff at home and you are spraying pesticides on your plants, that is something that I definitely would recommend if you can. If you live in a state where you can get it tested, you definitely want to do that. This is with fruits and vegetables as well. If you spray anything on your plants, guys, I really do think, like, not just washing them, like, you should get them tested and to see if you actually are.
So
that's why it's better to go organic.
But
guys.
financially-
it's better to go organic.
financially though, like not everyone can. Is it cheap to get your fruits? Like if I just wanted to test my peppers, I can just like take them to you, or like is there a way they can go about testing?
So for cannabis testing labs specifically, they're not allowed to test anything else other than cannabis. They're not legally even allowed to test and give you a certificate of analysis for hemp. It is marijuana, medical marijuana only, for the state of
Really?
Ohio. Some other states, they might be a little bit different. There are some multi-state operating labs that some states might be able to do it and the other states might not. But I know that was kind of crazy. No, there's definitely exceptions to rules each place you go, and there's definitely changes in prices wherever you go. For instance, for hemp, you can go all across the United States, and so prices are way lower comparatively to like medical marijuana.
So I don't know if you'll know this question, but when it comes to testing, when it comes to background of the product that you would be consuming as a medical marijuana patient, what if you could list like the top 3 states when it comes to extensiveness, when it comes to testing? And like I said, I don't know if you'll know that, but what would you say the top 3 states when it comes to medical marijuana testing are?
So, in my personal opinion, every single state needs to step up their game for medical marijuana testing, including Ohio. I do think that there are some, crazy action limits that we have to do that I think need to be addressed, but there's some other things that we should do to address quality that in my opinion, are not, set in stone. And it really depends on where you go as a processor or cultivator. But as far as the most strenuous,
Cheers.
most strenuous testing, that would be the state of Ohio. But you have to realize even though
Out of
we
all
go
50 states.
much lower action limits, we do not test, for instance, as many pesticides as California.
Really?
But we
Well,
go
it's
way lower
California,
from the
yeah.
pesticides that we do. Yeah. For instance, one of the pesticides we talk about, like cyfluthrin, we test, I believe it's like 10 parts per billion is what we have to get at.
Oh,
And
wow.
cyfluthrin is an isomer, so you have to basically split those all up. We can get into that later. But the same.
Sit down. What does that mean? Like when you have to test it like that?
So an isomer is basically, it goes along with the structure of the actual individual molecule. So you can have a molecule that, let's say, it has 5 parts to it, like a hand, and then you can also have it flip-flopped, right? That structurally is different than this one.
Yeah.
Even though they're composed of the exact same things, they structurally are different. Then you also have to add in, what about isotopes of elements, guys? Because like there's different types of carbon. There's multiple different types of carbon. That also means so there's multiple different types of shit that you can get into.
One's an inline pip slap, the other one's out of line.
Backhand. Yes, correct.
Jeez.
You get the front hand and the backhand.
This is
I
probably
got
the most
backhanded by chemistry as well back in the day.
This is probably one of the most educated guests we've had on.
Podcast so far.
Yeah, geez. All right, so
we haven't even started talking about superconductor.
Yeah, I'm excited for that part. Huge news on that one.
Yeah.
But all right, so when
Back
it comes to back to cannabis.
Let's talk about like the machines and stuff. Like, are they massive? Like, are you using like huge computers or something? Or are you having little tiny like microscopes and stuff like that?
That's another thing. It really depends on where you go. For instance, like California, I'm not gonna lie, guys, not to like throw shade at California labs or anything. You guys are doing great out there, but the overall like processing laboratories are gonna look way different comparatively to some other states and some other countries. For instance, if you go over to Europe, medical marijuana labs are literally the cleanest thing you guys have ever seen. Everything, if it is metal, it has to be polished stainless steel. So like, and it has to be, there's like crazy ridiculous cleanliness laws. Like for instance, I got to look at a extractor that the United States model was like $40 million. The same exact size and throughput model that was up to the EU standards, almost $300 million. Because of all the extra shit that they had to do to polish stuff up. Basically, every single line of tubing polished, this, that, and the other.
Do you think it's just because of the extensiveness of how long the UK's had a little bit more open laws and regulations in regards to marijuana consumption?
Really is more the way that they're setting up their cannabis laws. They're really treating it more like medicine, while the United States is kind of treating it more like a commodity, which allows for different issues. I think that there should be both, in my personal opinion. For instance, if you treat it more like a commodity, you're not going to be as caring more about quality. You're going to be treating it more like, for instance, like not to call out, Bud Light or anything, but you're going to treat it more like a Bud Light. It's all about the quantity and marketing, and the quantity over quality, getting it all out to the people, as opposed to like a craft beer where, they're taking a lot of time for the bottles, for the labels, for the ingredients, they're doing all this other stuff, which I'm not saying Bud Light doesn't have its place. And I'm not saying this, like more recreational market cannabis does not have its place. I think it does, but it's really disheartening for the connoisseurs out there who actually want good quality medicine that don't need a lot of THC to get them to where they need to go.
So you're also one of the first marijuana licensed connoisseurs too, right?
For the state of Ohio, yes, I was one of the first licensed marijuana medical patients. I'm going to be giving up my medical card this year just due to I'm going to be traveling a lot, and it just doesn't really make sense considering I'm not even going to be in the state. And also I'm, running a hemp company. So I'm just going to use a lot more of the hemp that I'm able to get for a much reduced price comparatively to the actual medical marijuana. And it does similar effects. I mean, definitely if you're, completely locked up, you're definitely going to want THC. I'm just, going to be honest with you guys, but hemp will get you through the day and get you where you need to go. But anyway, back to what you were talking about. I am also, I have a cannabis sommelier certificate. So I am
very earthy. No, this one's floral.
Yeah. So it's not in and of itself like a wine sommelier where I can just, open up a bag and be like, oh, that is Blue Dream 1994. No, it doesn't work like that. But what you're able to do is you're trained to use your trigeminal nerve in your nose to actually pick out effects and aromas that will cause different flavors, and not only flavors, but also sensations as well. So
Wow.
I'm actually able to open up a bag with my eyes closed, being able to smell it and basically feel my nose, and be able to tell if it's a little bit lower, like, all right, this is going to be a little bit more of a sedating guy. If it's a little bit higher, going to be a little bit more of a stimulating guy. So,
Have
and
you?
if it's in between, you can kind of gauge if it's kind of like a hybrid thing.
So I think it's safe to say, like, we've all done it. Before medical marijuana existed, we all smoked it. Looking back at the shit that you've bought, not exactly on the
I was
on
going
those scale.
to ask the same question.
Do you, now that you know your shit, so to say, do you look back and say, that guy really lied to me about this was an indica or a sativa or anything like that?
Absolutely, guys. Absolutely,
Isn't
guys.
like an indica and a sativa like not a real thing anymore?
If you guys, that's like a whole like 20-minute conversation. If you really want me to dive into it,
Kind of, yeah.
He's one of the, and it's a bit. I've heard in the community it's quite a big diversifier too.
Yes. So a lot of the states are using indica, hybrid, and sativa. But I'm sorry to break it. I'm sorry to break it down to you guys, and I'm sorry to kind of crush this whole veil that has been put into the cannabis industry. But those don't exist. So cannabis sativa, it's actually cannabis sativa Linnaeus. That last part sounds familiar. Carl Linnaeus, he's the guy who made binomial nomenclature. He's like very, very famous, So
Everyone knows of him.
That
He's
is
super famous.
rope. When you think of cannabis sativa, that is like when most people think of hemp,
They think of, like, rope.
they
like
think
a-
of like the rope
Yeah.
type of hemp. There are multiple different types of hemp that we can get into
For
here in a
fibers,
second,
yeah.
but there's fibrous hemp, and there's also hemp that you can now consume as medicine that is made to for minor cannabinoids, like the stuff that my business
So
does.
the idea of when they say sativa, they're just getting after a taller plant. It's not necessarily really the effects. They're like, oh, this plant's taller. It's closer to hemp, or no?
So it really depends on a lot of factors: internodal spacing, how close they grow together. If they're not able to grow like super close together, super tall, not having buds at all, if they are really really close together, super tall, that is cannabis sativa Linnaeus. That is the fibrous rope type of hemp.
So when it comes to, is there like observational studies that are being done in regards to different strands? So taking a group of people and saying, okay, what did you experience during this? Did you have relaxation? Did you have pain relief?
Yes.
Medical.
Yeah.
Yes, there is multiple different studies that are being done. With it being not federally legal, it's being really, really hard, and they're only able to do so much with these studies, and it's kind of, in my opinion, not where it needs to be. A lot of it is more anecdotal questions and things like that, not actually like doing brain scans or anything like that, which is my opinion what needs to be done. MRIs, things like that. These types of things need to be done for cannabis and cannabis patients because cannabis reacts differently to each individual, and also depending on your natural endocannabinoid levels can also react completely different. Like your 2-arachidonoglycerol and your anandamide levels, those are what are actually responsible for your natural homeostasis as a human being. So the endocannabinoid system is actually we thought it was part of your nervous system, and we found out later on that holy shit, these are actually two separate guys. Even though they are basically
guys, two separate guys,
two separate guys, like they're in conjunction with our nerve, right? But they're not actually
like
nerve cells
or cells.
So we always, when back in the day when people were cutting people up trying to figure out what the heck's going on inside of a body, they just thought that the good old days, they just thought that those were nerves, but in fact they are nerves and your ECS
intertwined.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Holy shit, Paul. How's it feel having a brother that's a fucking genius compared to you?
I got the athleticism and you got the brains. It is what it is.
I'm telling you what, this is the most engaging conversation I've ever had. Not just because we're talking like marijuana. He's saying shit I've never even heard of.
Never even heard of. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, sometimes you got to break it down for us, though. Like, not every listener out here knows exactly what you're talking about.
If a lot of the times the listeners that we have
I'm ignorant in this topic a lot,
are word of mouth.
Look at him.
And when it comes to word of mouth, David, think about who I am and who Paul is, and you're generally getting the basis of who's joining this podcast. So layman's terms is always a great way of putting it. But no, this is great. So I had a question that I've been kind of dwelling on. So when it comes to growing factors, do you do, or is it a mixture of both indoor controlled environment, or is it a field that's
like, do you have to
exposed
have
to the elements?
Exterior sunlight?
I've grown large scale indoor and large scale outdoor. Cure Leaf was large scale indoor. We had over 14,000 plants. we had a max of 14,000. So basically when you get to certain levels, you'd have to like kind of fluctuate and kill some off if you didn't want them and things like that, so that you're always at the 14,000. But we had over 14,000 plants inside. And then also at Hot Hemp, we've got, like I said, 1,700 outside this year. I will say, in my personal opinion, I mean, obviously, cannabis growing is like, the old saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat. But in my personal opinion, growing outdoors with supplemental lighting is superior, just because of some of the results that I have seen. But it doesn't mean if you grow outdoors that your stuff's going to be good. There's so many factors that you have to deal with. Not only is the lighting that you get important, but the airflow is very, very important. The type of soil that you have is very, very important. If there is enough beneficial bacteria and fungi like mycorrhizal life in there, all these things are very, very important to not only cannabis but to every single plant. And that is why you see online some of these people that have these, massive pumpkins and they do it all organically, or these massive cucumbers and they do it all organically. They're basically using a lot of these different tools and tricks that these people have found, doing things like crushing up eggshells to add, calcium back into your soil, doing different types of composts, or like vermiculture, which is actually using worms and worm poo to break down different types of nutrients and things.
It kind of reminds me of like when we were back in school, they told us that, like the natives, when, the Englishmen came over and they were first immigrated here and they got together for like Thanksgiving, the natives taught them how to grow properly.
Yeah.
And they would put fish down underneath the maize.
Yeah.
So like the idea is there's a lot more nutrients. They're going to get the nitrogen that they need and everything directly onto that seedling.
And to go off of that, they also talked and taught us about companion plants. So a lot of people don't even know this because they just want to have these nice clean gardens, but it's good to have companion plants with and you can look it up. Each plant, I guarantee you out there, has some sort of companion plant.
And obviously there's ones that are negative. Like
yes, absolutely. And there's also types of plants that you can plant to, for instance, let's say your tomatoes are getting attacked by a certain type of insect.
Right?
Yeah, well, clover is one of them. But you can plant specific plants next to it that will attract all of your bugs, and then your tomatoes are fine. They're called sacrificial plants.
The tomatoes we had this year got destroyed, but the peppers are looking fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we also have honeybees now. That's a big thing. You have more pollinators around the area. It's going to make, better fruit, right?
Pollinators are a big thing. And I don't know, there is not a lot of evidence out there with cannabis and pollination, but what I will say is there is a bee hive at right next to our farm, and I always see bees covering our plants, and the honey tastes like hemp.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times. Like there's a lot of hemp honey out there too.
Yes. Now,
what about the bees up in the north that people say they would like eat and get the pollen from a local plant, and then they call it like your hot honey. It would get you like hallucinogenic.
Yeah.
Hot honey, I think, is a little bit different than that. I think hot honey
is
actually like
rotten.
Honey. Yeah, I think there's like some.
But I'm saying if it can happen in that situation, couldn't it theoretically happen with just high levels of THC bud plants too? Like if they go in there and get that those pollen.
I would imagine you'd have to mix some oil with it.
I don't know about that. That's a lot of,
You think it's a stretch, or
I think it's a stretch. But I will say I have had infused honey, and infused honey is amazing.
Amazing.
It is
Absolutely amazing.
So it's like a tincture,
but it's honey.
So down here in Florida, we have what you would call flea market weed, and it's the THC 10 or whatever.
Oh, the deltas.
Yeah, the
that's
deltas.
a whole thing, isn't it?
It still has a psychological effect to it. It still has a body effect to it. What is the major characteristic differences between that and what you're doing?
Yeah, like if I get a Delta 10, is it like real weird, or a Delta 8?
This is gonna piss a lot of people off, but I'm sorry to break it to you guys, but yes, there is some Delta 10, Delta 8s, weird things that go on in cannabis that, could potentially produce a small amount of it. The highest Delta 8 that I've ever seen, and this isn't an oil, so this is after like we extracted and everything, was like under 1%. So I'm not saying that we could potentially in the future go out and genetically modify something to produce a lot of Delta 8. But unfortunately, if you're going out and you're consuming Delta 8, Delta 10, HHO, THCO, flower, it is not actually grown that way. It is synthetically made in a laboratory.
Is that what that is, Connor? Did you get that side of the road weed cart?
No, I bought this at the mall.
Yeah.
Okay,
And you
so
guys
here's my
need to be
question
very,
next.
very careful
I was gonna
of
say,
these.
How are these secondary carts? Like, have you got to test some of these black market
Yes.
carts and see what's inside of them?
Yes. And shit, I have to, because I have signed NDAs and things like that. So I can't really necessarily tell you exactly. But
Get him drunk. Get him
is-
drunk. No, I'm kidding.
Get them drunk.
There is definitely, we need to look into that part of the industry. But the problem is not necessarily what we're looking at, it's what we're not looking at.
Is like
a lot of these
proprietary products and stuff added into it, or
not
is it just
necessarily
pesticides
a
and
lot of
herbicides?
no, not even necessarily that. A lot of these people, they're either taking CBD and using super strong acids and super strong bases and different molecules to literally rip stuff off and put stuff on. And that's really what I'm getting at.
Synthetic
Is
marijuana.
yes, we're only testing for
We're smoking K2, dudes.
Yeah,
Some spice.
yeah,
We're smoking spice.
that you guys are it's consuming synthetic cannabis. Yes, but
Oh.
it is
Whoops.
basically
Oh,
there's also other ways where you can not even use cannabis at all, which that part scares me.
isn't that with terpenes?
You can
in it?
use toluene, and actually using different chemistry, you can create delta 8 and delta 10. And if you guys are getting carts from China, it is not only legal, but it's kind of
Shady.
I mean, when you're making a shitload of money, it's
bad interest.
and they also have the pharmaceutical capabilities, I'm not, saying that they're making shady carts, but I'm saying they're making shady carts, like
So
it's definitely happening.
is
So
part of
again-
your NDA the Wuhan virus in this, or like?
No.
All right. So it's completely
what have you
synthetic
tested?
then. So what's causing like the psychological effects? What's causing the body? So you're saying like the body relaxation part of it's probably related to CBD, but anything that's happening with neurologically or whatever is synthetic.
Yeah. So that kind of goes back to what is your endocannabinoid system. So you have your like CB1 and CB2 receptors. Those are your two main big ones. There's a bunch of other receptors that your that endocannabinoids can bind to. I think like one of them is like TRVP1. There's a bunch of other different crap that they can bind to. But in the grand scheme of things, it's CB1 and CB2 receptors.
So you have, as a human being, actual receptors when it comes to cannabinoids that are specifically directed towards marijuana.
Cannabinoids.
Yes, correct.
So
Correct. And they're all over your body.
Genetically, or not genetically.
The stoned ape theory was right.
So essentially, human beings have written their DNA over time, I would imagine, right?
Not just humans, almost all mammals. Actually, all mammals have endocannabinoid receptors.
Really, all of them.
Well, we haven't necessarily found every single.
But for the majority of the time, when we
basically
test
every
one,
single one we find, and we test to see if it's got an ECS system. It does.
That is fascinating as shit.
Yes. So like whales, we didn't want to. Whales have an ECS.
So whales
we're
get
we're
high.
out there getting whales high.
You theoretically, if you had enough THC, could potentially get a whale high.
Is there a formula?
There also could be a lot of other side
Hold
effects.
on.
that could
Wait,
potentially
Paul.
happen.
Wait, Paul.
Hold on.
Is there a
hold on.
formula to calculate how much body mass per you would need?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you done the math to find out how much?
Well, do you remember it?
So it's about 5 milligrams per kilogram.
Okay, so how much does how many
a whale
kilograms
weigh?
is a whale?
Well, are we going like blue whale, or are we just going like a freaking narwhal?
All right, let's get back to it. I'm starting to get a little bit of a buzz,
here's
so
my
this is going to
question. So, like,
sidetrack a little bit.
People always say that they get their dogs high or their cats high. Or
You
something,
can,
like,
yes, get your
or like
dogs and cats high.
catnip. Is that true that like catnip acts and reacts the same way with those kind of felines as like us smoking marijuana? Or...
No, actually, catnips reacts the exact same way that cocaine does for the human brain.
That makes
It
sense.
releases dopamine and serotonin,
That totally
which
makes
is
sense.
why they kind of can freak out. Yeah, and their
Wow.
pupils dilate. Yeah, so that catnip for cats does not react like cannabis. However, they do have an endocannabinoid system, and
So
if
you
you
can
give
get
them,
your cat high.
you
Good to know.
can get your cat high.
Do you-
That's abuse.
Your dog high.
Just letting you guys know out
You
there,
got
like
my
that is
dog
abuse.
So wait a second. You can put your cat on speed, and that's completely okay. But the moment you give it relaxation benefits, it's animal abuse.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Correct. That is the way they look at this. Yes, but
That's
they
awesome.
do have hemp for your dogs and things like that. Hot Hem actually produced a CBG dog treat that is made out of freeze-dried chicken.
CBG,
Look it up, guys.
what is
It
that?
is fantastic. So CBG is cannabigerol. It's actually referred to as the mother of all cannabinoids. If you guys can go ahead and look up online the actual endocannabinoid. I'm not sorry, the endocannabinoid, the phytocannabinoid breakdown. They all start from CBG and then they get added to, and then different things happen. Light causes this to happen, degradation, all these other things happen to where they will break down into other molecules. But so, like for instance, THCA, that comes from CBG. CBN, which is basically the very, very end, not the very, very end, but basically the end as far as we're concerned for endocannabinoid purposes for cannabis, that starts with CBG. So
Really?
yes. So
Is there any that specifically have the most like information and credibility to like actual like medicinal uses or properties right now that are like striding in the medical side, or is it more just for specifically like pain relief only, you think?
So it's actually a little bit of everything, man. That's the good part about the endocannabinoid system, because it does so much. You're able to not only use it to target specific illnesses, but you're able to use it in conjunction with other medicine to help out with illnesses. So, for instance, there's a gentleman right now who I'm giving a lot of CBD and CBG to, who it has blood cancer, and it is helping him out tremendously. He's basically,
Really?
Wow.
it's in conjunction with chemo, and after his chemo, you can tell like it's hitting him hard, and he'll go and he'll literally drink a whole bottle of tincture, and 15-20 minutes later, he's not back to 100%, but he's definitely lively.
Can eat food,
can
drink
eat food,
water.
can drink water, and things like that.
Why do you think the perception of smoking marijuana, right, is so negatively frowned upon? Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, it
Dare.
is progressively.
That's why I
No,
call
it's actually
Dare.
before that. If you guys really want
The
me to go
war on
into it,
drugs.
I
this-
would like
this
that.
asshole, this asshole called William Randolph Hearst and Harry Anslinger. They're
Say
the
that again?
reason.
Wait.
William Randolph Hearst and Harry Anslinger.
Yeah. Anal
These-
slinger. Yeah.
Ant slinger.
Anslinger.
Slash
So,
slinging slasher.
So these assholes actually are entirely responsible for the victimization of cannabis. They are basically, what happened is Anslinger went to 30 different doctors and said, "Hey, I need you to find something bad about cannabis." Everybody came back and said nothing's wrong with cannabis. Cannabis is a good medicine. I've been prescribed for years, hundreds of years, this, that, and the other.
What was the
He
time
then
frame of these two
Did the
people?
exact same thing and said, "I need you to find something bad about marijuana."
What was the time frame that this all happened? Like the 19...
So this was during Prohibition. So basically, Anslinger and Hearst were really, really big into the Prohibition. That was literally their job. They were like head of Prohibition. And also one of them was really big in Congress and everything. And that was like what was the whole reason that he was getting elected, is because he was saving the community, saving people from alcohol, this, that, and the other. But when Prohibition ended, he didn't have a fucking job anymore. So he needed something to do to basically continue himself. So he basically said that, all African Americans were smoking marijuana and raping people. And they said the same thing about the Mexican immigrants that were coming over a lot more at that particular time. And that's the whole reason why they called it marijuana, is because marijuana was a term that a lot of the people from Latin America used, because it's actually a beautiful word. A lot of people demonize it now, but it's actually a really beautiful word. Way back in like Spanish occupation, they were marijuana was part of their rituals, and they completely said, no, it's done. You have to basically believe in Christ, right? So they called it marijuana and Mary Jane, like the Mother Mary. So that way they would say like, oh, if anybody would heard them overhearing them talking about it, saying like, I need Mother Mary, things like that, or we're gonna go and pray to Mother Mary, things like that. The conquistadors wouldn't just fucking kill them, because it was illegal to practice their religion, and that's, they would still use cannabis as their basically their religion. Yeah, and it's actually a very, very beautiful word. So do not demonize the word marijuana. It actually even though they tried to ruin it in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and so on, it actually comes from very, very beautiful origin. So please do not demonize the word marijuana.
That is Holy shit, dude! You've given me like 32 different popular TikToks right now. So
We're gonna break this down a lot.
yeah, so okay, so you both have heard of a regulation that just went into effect where it makes it a lot
Bring it
harder.
up.
No, to um, essentially attack people for practicing religious freedoms and things like that in the workplace. So for the listeners, just say you're praying Mary Jane when you go out to lunch.
Yeah.
No, so that's incredible. I didn't know that history at all. That's awesome. All right.
Because Harry Anslinger and William Randolph Hearst actually eradicated all of that history.
Isn't it true? Like I remember hearing about this long ago. That like one of the studies that they used when they were bringing it up as a bill was a study of where they were using like capuchin monkeys and like
Yeah.
filling their almost like they were stuck, like their heads were in a vacuum and they would just fill it with smoke and then they died from suffocation.
Yes.
Not
Oh.
from the weed.
Huh.
Sorry, it
Well,
disconnected.
Over an ounce of marijuana per tiny monkey. An ounce to a pound of marijuana was combusted, put into these
They went
monkeys
out
via
in a-
gas mask,
all
and
of
they
this
literally
stuff.
suffocated to death.
That would
And
kill a
that's what they
human.
used since the 70s
That's what
as
they
the
were-
main thing that, hey, marijuana's bad.
Yeah, it'll kill you.
And
It'll
Dare actually used that when they first started off.
Of course they do. They take the
They
extremes of something
So,
and
this sounds so bad.
That's-
It
yeah.
hurts me.
they politicize
Like, how many-
it. Is what
How many
happened.
monkeys do you think? Like how many monkeys was it? Did they ever release how many monkeys?
How many monkeys jumped off the bed
Oh.
high?
Guys, I hate to break it to you, but there's literally on a daily basis, there's millions of mice that are killed in the name of science, thousands and thousands of monkeys. There's specific breeds of like beagles that are, literally just for scientific purposes. Rabbits, all different types of things. It's sad, but it's kind of unfortunately one of those necessary evils. Before they,
So you believe in this? You think it's?
I don't necessarily believe in it, but I will say it's a lot better than just wrangling people up off the street and just injecting them with shit,
PETA
which is
is in
what
the
people will be
chat.
forced to do.
PETA's in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah,
No, and
We've been
PETA
cancelled.
works alongside with these organizations so that they, humanely treat these, different animals. Yeah, and
So they're
there's
treated like gods to the instant that they're.
yeah, and there is different laws, rules, and regulations on how you it's called SAC. It's a term shortened for
SAC.
sacrifice.
Ooh.
There is rules and regulations for how you
I'm sorry.
dispatch of the I don't know
going
what
to
they
hell,
call them,
man.
patients. I really don't know. It's messed up. And it's really sad to think about, but it is. There's actually a statue in Russia of a large mouse. I think he's holding like a double helix and everything and like has like a lab coat on or whatever in tribute to the millions and millions of mice that are killed each year.
That's the Russians would have that. It's
Specifically
crazy.
for
I mean,
that, yeah.
to be fair, it is going like he said it himself. I mean,
Yes.
when it comes to the studies that are going towards it, it is something that's treating kids, teenagers, adults, grandparents,
old, young, of all ages.
everything
all
when
of
it
us.
comes to getting through cancers. So
And
is
not
there a
Vaccines, things like that.
Not just that, but
Alzheimer's,
also for
anything
livestock
like that?
too.
Yeah, correct.
So has there
There's a lot
been
of research going into livestock medication recently.
any correlation between like Alzheimer's research and marijuana or anything like that?
Yes, actually, a lot of research, and actually some anecdotal evidence that I will say for ourselves with our father. There's times where I walked in and he looked like he had no idea what the fuck was going on, and he like kind of looked at me like he didn't. I mean, like he kind of knew what I was and everything, but after he would consume cannabis, whether it be THC or CBD. I gave him a lot of hemp. He, within a few minutes, would instantly be back to his old self.
Wow.
So I will say in my personal opinion, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence with like dementia and Alzheimer's and everything like that. But there's also
But there
a lot of actual research papers and stuff going on right now. At the cellular level, it actually helps break off that plaque.
So there was many times when Dad was high though, and he was definitely not here.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it kind of goes to show, like with the whole medication, you get too high, you get too high. Like
It
it's
happens to all of us.
yeah, no
So-
amount of
So let's use you as a prime example. If I was to walk into the shop and say, okay, I'm experiencing thoughtfulness.
Depression.
I'm experiencing depression. I'm experiencing pain,
anxiety, any of these things that
Would
people are
there,
needing.
if somebody was to go into the shop and they're looking for something specific, maybe they're introverted, they don't want to talk to the shopkeeper, what would they look for say, anxiety on the
That's
label?
why
That's where you get into
that's
the
why we got to the sativa and indica before.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to use those as like
Reference
marks
points.
and reference points of it. Like
They're trying to say that sativa is stimulating and indica is sedating and everything in between is a hybrid, which kind of getting back to the whole sativa indica hybrid, everything
full loop,
full
circle.
loop, full spec. There is cannabis indica. There is cannabis indica afghanica. There is cannabis ruderalis. There is cannabis sativa linnaeus. There's all these different subspecies of cannabis all tied up within one. And you can, and now due to a lot of modern breeding, they're kind of hard to determine until we actually look at the entire cannabis genome and track it.
Is there anyone that claims then to have like the closest original to it?
Oh no, there is still, it's a whole thing right now with land races and everything. Like there's still cannabis ruderalis growing in the like Siberia. There is still cannabis indica afghanica grown in the Hindu Kush mountains in Afghanistan. There's still cannabis indica growing in again the Hindu Kush mountains and things like this. And you can actually find these strains. And you can, and there is actually people. It was. There is actually, this whole kind of subsect of the cannabis industry that these people go out to try to get the old school cultivars to help clean up their genetic lines, because we're having a lot of problems with IBLs, which are referred to as inbred lines, where it's, yes, you are starting to get really pretty nice internodal spacing type
but it's
buds.
not doing anything that we're like really wanting
but it doesn't
to
mean shit if it grows 2 weeks and then just dies, and that's literally what we're having happen. It's actually, in my opinion, starting to become like an epidemic in the cannabis
market
industry.
and polish a turd, but at the end of the day it's still a turd.
Everybody is so overhyped about getting the highest THC content that other aspects of the cannabis plant are completely thrown out the door.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. So it's sort of like the concept with corn stalks, right? So you can grow a 30-foot corn stalk, but it's completely worthless the moment it starts producing corn because it will fall over with the stalk being like that. So it's kind of the crossbreeding side of it. I am going to go ahead and use the restroom real quick, but we do have a question from Logan, and these is something that you two can discuss. Terpenes. What is a terpene?
Terpenes.
Yeah, yes. Terpentines. I'll be right back.
Dr. Dave.
You guys.
So, I actually validated a terpene assay for the last job that I was at, cannabis industry. So terpenes are actually natural hydrocarbons, guys. Very similar to a lot of other hydrocarbons that you come in on a regular basis, like propane, butane, things like that. But they are aromatic compounds that are naturally produced by plants. Right? So they're responsible for a lot of the natural aromas that you would smell on a daily basis.
Perfume. You're getting the
yes, some perfumes actually do consume terpenes. For instance, if anybody likes the smell of lavender, you are actually smelling, when you think of the smell of lavender, you are smelling linalool. That is what you're making that correlation to. If you really, really like beer, you really, really like hops, you're really, really smelling is myrcene. If you really like the smell of black pepper, that you're smelling beta-caryophyllene. There is all these different terpenes. For instance, I tested in my assay, we had like 64
different terpenes.
Different terpenes that I would test
each
for.
One of those is like a different sensory in a sense. It smells.
Yes, taste. So there is what is referred to as the entourage effect with cannabis and terpenes. So it is believed that the cannabinoids will actually bind with the terpenes and they will stay on your receptors longer. And not only stay on your receptors longer, have a completely different effect depending on the terpene that is binding to the cannabinoid. Now, we do know that there is an entourage effect with different cannabinoids. So like, for instance, CBD and THC can bind together and stay on your receptor longer. So that is something that is really, really cool with cannabis as well. But so you can kind of use that.
Is there companies out there then using these terpenes as like replacements then, and they're technically
more marketing,
getting you high?
More marketing. But
marketing.
Yes, they are saying like, oh, this is a little bit more stimulating. Oh, this is a little bit more sedating. Oh, this is a little bit more this.
But
you can't really say like this is going to give you this effect, because each person's different. Right. Go on.
So this is the common question, especially with somebody that's first getting into medical marijuana or, recreational, is I got too fucking high. And what I've been told is if you've gotten to that point, put a little bit of CBD tinctures under your tongue, it'll bring you down.
Yep.
What
Yep.
is that the case, and why?
That is the
Or
case.
is it with milk too?
So
Isn't it, like,
kind
the
of
whole
going
thing is
back,
fat?
that could actually
So that-
theoretically get you more fucked up if you had an edible, but we'll go
Really?
into that in a little bit
Okay.
in a second. But going back to like what you were talking about with CBD, if you, like I said earlier, if you consume THC and CBD, it really acts with all the minor cannabinoids, CBG, CBN, blah blah blah, whatever, all the cannabinoids. If you consume them at the exact same time, they have a lot more likelihood of them binding together and staying on your receptor longer. However, if you say, let's say you smoke one weed, right? One marijuana.
One
You
weed.
smoke 1 unit of THC, whatever that may be. And then 5-10 minutes later, you smoke 1 unit of CBD. The CBD, because it's such a large molecule, will actually knock this THC right off of those receptors and replace it. And could potentially, if you're like way too high, bring you down. Also, if you're not high enough, bring you down and it gets not where you necessarily want to be. If you
Wow.
want a more of a stimulating, like say your pain's really, 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 really bad, I would recommend taking the endocannabinoids at the exact same time. I would not take THC first and then CBD second, because it might kind of be a little bit, counterintuitive.
One thing that I've experienced when I've walked into a shop is I ask them, I'm like, hey, I ask hypothetical questions just because I like to, screwing with salespeople. And this kind of brings in the sales tactic. Do you think that salespeople or just the people behind the counter, when it comes to new people trying a product, that they're like, yeah, you need this, and next thing you know, they're taking 100 milligram gummy. So if you were to tell somebody, hey, this is what you should look for if you're just starting off when it comes to edibles or tinctures or smoking, what would you say this is a good
safety
starting?
measures in a sense? Like if you're starting
so
out, is there
if
things
you're
like
if
you
you're
should
starting
follow?
out, my biggest recommendation is get a low milligram, especially with edibles, because it's when you are taking an edible, you are not consuming THC.
It's
What is actually happening?
Decarbed.
It is decarb, yes,
Yeah.
because it
Wow,
needs to be
Connor, you
activated.
know.
Congratulations, you are you are consuming THC, not THCA. Cannabis only naturally produces THCA, which is the acidic form. And in order for it to go onto our receptors, we have to do what is referred to as decarboxylation, which there's a carboxylic acid at the end of the chain that you need to break off in order for it to bind to our receptor. That is correct. But what the fuck are we talking about?
It's decarboxylation.
Yeah, my decarboxylation worked well.
But no, so like when someone starts into it and gets into
Oh,
it,
yes.
you
Back to
go
what
to
I'm talking
you're
about.
going to the store for your first time. Some people are
What do you
freaked out, some people
recommend?
are, like
Yeah.
excited,
Yeah.
like a kid in a candy
You need to take whatever, like for instance, if it's a gummy, you need to chop it up into smaller sections and consume it in a smaller, because you don't know how it's going to affect.
And how long would you wait? Because like some people are like, oh, I waited 45 minutes.
4 hours at least.
4 hours.
It is
apiece.
completely different. If your body is not used to it yet, you might not even get high the very first time you consume it.
And I would imagine
also, guys,
your body fat percentage plays a part into it. How fast? Yeah.
Exactly.
Because it's very acidic. What the
No,
fat is.
it's lipophilic.
Yeah.
So it's lipophilic. It likes lipids. So it's hydrophobic.
Attracted.
It's one and the other. So it doesn't like
to the
water.
milk. Then I've always heard. I remember in college I had this guy who was like, I looked like to another older brother in a sense, and he'd be like, hey, when I was too high for smoking for the first time for real and like really smoking, he'd be like, hey, drink milk, it'll sober you up. It doesn't do that.
So there's a lot of things that are in milk, so potentially there could be something else within everything else. But I will say it is very fatty, and if you let's say consumed an edible, it could bind to that fat and get past your blood-brain barrier just a little bit quicker. So it might actually make you a little bit fucked up depending on what you got going on. But potentially, yes, it could potentially do it. I will say actually it seems very counterintuitive, but there is a lot of science behind this. Alcohol. If and this kind of goes back into what I wanted to talk about a little bit earlier. There is a difference when you consume an edible orally. When you consume it and you actually ingest it, it is going through your liver and in the glucuronidation process, and it's actually getting converted into what's referred to as 11-hydroxy THC. It is anywhere from 2 to some studies are saying up to like 20, 30 times as potent as THC.
That makes sense.
For
Why
psychoactive.
Yes.
there's been people that I've hung out with, and they strictly are edibles, and then and then a friend would bring a joint into the party, and they're like, this is
They
like
couldn't hang.
this is nothing. This is
Yep.
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah,
I'm
'cause
so
they're
used to
to the
edibles.
11-hydroxy, man. Like the THC and shit.
Holy smokes! I've learned a lot during this podcast, and we've talked weed for an entire hour.
There's
Holy
so
smokes.
much more. It just goes on and
Yeah.
on and on. Because I mean, one of the things I always would ask you about too was like when you had the male, female, and there's like the secondary plants. Like I guess the pollination and cross pollination process. People see these things where they're like, oh, we cut it off and made a sliver of this one and kept it going. How does that work? Like, what is it called? A drone? It's a drone, right?
A clone?
A clone.
Yeah,
So
you're referring
cloning.
you're referring to cloning. That is very, very common in the cannabis industry. You'll basically have a mother plant. You'll cut 10 to 18 inch sections off, and then you can use rooting hormone on that to get the roots to go faster. But basically, that will then turn into a whole plant. You could also do crazy things like grafting, where you grow another plant and then attach the cannabis plant on top of it. So if there's an already existing root structure,
Like
you
a
can grow
tomato
off of that.
plant.
Correct. Yes.
You
Yes.
could just attach it.
Yeah, like a very common grafting plant that people do for fun is called a ketchup and fries plant. They'll have a specific potato bottom that is, in the roots. They'll chop it and then they'll put a tomato on top.
And
Ketchup
it grows
fries.
both.
And it grows both, yeah. So when you're done, when it's harvest time, you have potatoes and tomatoes.
So I was watching
So all you
TikTok
gardeners out there,
earlier
extra
today.
fun, cool stuff to get into.
And potatoes.
Potatoes, ketchup and fries.
Well, I was watching a TikTok earlier today, and she had somehow a spearmint plant was producing blueberries also, and the blueberries were they tasted like
Grafting.
spearmint.
Yeah, that's grafting.
So
So
is that like with the grapples when like you have apples that taste like grapes and shit? Like I've been seeing
There-
those things.
I don't know about that necessarily. They very well could be, but that could also be genetic modification. There's a lot of that going on with food nowadays as well. Basically, all of the corn that we have nowadays is entirely
Not real.
genetically modified. Yeah.
yeah, it's all based off of a grass. Oh, so a question that I was thinking about while I was peeing. So marijuana, is it a flower, a fruit, or a vegetable?
Ooh,
So it's technically a fruit.
it's not a flower,
They refer to it as flower.
but it's a fruit.
It is also referred to as the fruit of the plant.
Okay, but technically, fruits come from the budding flowers, right? Or like it's the flower first, then
Just
based
the
off
whole
of
thing with
seeds.
fruit is a lot of people associate fruit with sweetness, and you can have like fruits that are poisonous.
Well,
fruits that
tomato is a
bitter.
fruit because the seeds are
Tomato
internal.
is a fruit.
But
Yes,
I'm
yes, that is
stating like
correct.
it starts off in the spring as a flower, though it gets pollinated and then it starts and
What?
grows its fruit, though. Isn't it how
No,
it
it's the whole life cycle of the actual bud. The female plant will has pistils on it that will then collect pollen, and then they will basically kind of go
pseudo
metamorphosis.
penis?
Not a pseudo penis. It's not like the hyenas, guys. Cannabis does not have pseudo penises. All right.
So back to the lunch break, you're going to go ahead, and if your manager asks where you're going, you're going to go have some fruit and praise Mary Jane.
Right.
There you go.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Holy smokes, David. Dr. Dave in the house. This is very informative. I learned a lot. What are some stupid, interesting facts that you have when it comes to the industry?
And
Stupid-
Taipan just text.
Kind of like a
Do
pickup
that
line.
second.
If somebody you're going to go up to and it's a pickup line, you're going to say this. The first thing you're going to say about marijuana.
First thing I would say about marijuana, how it could actually help people and not just uses to get people high. And that's unfortunately with the recreational aspect of it in the United States, which is a good thing. I do think that people should be using cannabis more so than alcohol. Not talking shit about drunk discussions or anything, but
Yeah,
that's just
you
my
dickhead.
That's just my personal opinion. I have never, in my personal opinion, in my personal life, I've never seen someone get high and then go start a fight. But I've seen a lot of people drink alcohol and want to go start fights. So just with that
commit
simple logic
larceny.
right there, yeah, or crazy.
Usually
shit.
they're high and they mess up and then they're arsonists. So
Yeah.
that's different.
Yeah.
Paul's over here doing math. 1 plus this equals fire.
Fire, fish, actually.
Fish. So, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Marijuana.
there's a lot of very, very cool things that can happen with cannabis. Like for instance, your CB1 and CB2 receptors. The CB1 receptors is all in your brain. That's like what gets you high. Your CB2 receptors is in your periphery. Like whenever you're feeling like very, very sedated and like couch locked, that's usually your CB2.
Very
That's something
lazy,
that's very, very interesting.
lethargic,
Yeah. So they're actually two separate receptors.
So we've got another question. What about CBC and CBN? Those are kind of up and
Yes.
coming, no?
CBC, cannabichromene, and CBN, cannabinol. Cannabinol is one of my favorites because just a little bit of cannabinol can really knock you out, guys. Like when I mean knock you out, like if you have trouble sleeping,
Is that
insomnia.
cannabis alcohol?
No.
Oh, because it just rolls off the tongue. I was like, that would be awesome.
What is
There are
cannabinol?
alcohols in cannabis, like
So there is natural alcohol.
yes, like French alcohol. I tested for that. That is also referred to
Is
as
that
a terpene.
based off of like a fermentation process or during growth, or
It's really just more so kind of like it's technically an alcohol. It's still like a hydrocarbon, but it's just really the way that the plant makes it, you know.
so
just-
you're referring to CBN knocks you completely out. Is that a product
What is CBC then?
that you would
CBC
buy?
is another really, really good one for like there's a lot of research going into it right now for like antihistamine type of properties. They think that it might have something to do there. There's a lot of research going in for CBC for
So like a
antifungal
Okay.
properties and things like that. Cannabichromene is a little bit newer in the grand scheme of things, even though it was discovered a few years ago. It's still not as much research has been going into it as a lot of these other cannabinoids like Delta 10, because they unfortunately
They
you
get the
fucked up.
spotlight.
Yeah, they get the spotlight, while all the guys, in my opinion, that are really, really cool and can actually, have potential to really help out modern medicine, they're kind of down there. And one thing I do want to mention, guys, specifically with cannabis, especially regarding governments and things like that,
Oh, fuck the
is
government.
if cannabis did not work and was so bad, then why does the United States have a federal patent on CBD and THC? Do not take my word for it. Look it up. The current
He's
drug is
going
called
to.
dronabinol and marinol. You can actually get it prescribed to you. It is a THC oral spray, and I believe they have a pill now as well. But they actually have a federal patent on that.
I wonder
So
who
if it
has
didn't work,
access to that federal
Why
patent.
would there be a federal patent?
And everyone else, David is very happy, and he would never commit suicide.
Wait, David, can you
I
say
do
that?
not have any informations on the Clintons.
So just conclusion, right? We're ended up at the end of the podcast. So we didn't talk about LK99.
Next time.
Yeah, and I would
Yeah.
really love to be about that because I'm ready to go in on LK99.
Honestly, we love
Actually,
you here.
fuck it. Let's do a longer podcast.
You want to just keep going?
Yeah,
This is
'cause
probably my favorite.
The LK99 and the cannabis kind of ties into each other. If I can start there.
You take it away, dude. Take it away.
So
Run with
LK99,
it.
to kind of start off and give an introduction on what it is. LK99 was discovered, I believe it was
South
by the
Korea.
Koreans. South Korea, yeah.
Yeah.
It's supposedly a natural pressure, natural ambient temperature superconductor. So this is a very, very big thing, guys, for everything. Literally everything we do in modern technology, superconductors are a big thing. But going off of to cannabis and how this ties in is graphene, hemp-based graphene, actually has much stronger capabilities and sustainability for not necessarily a superconductor aspect, even though it does have a lot of superconductor qualities. It's not fully a true superconductor because it does have resistance, but it is potentially has the ability to replace lithium ion the second we find a way to produce large scale graphene. So as long as we get large scale graphene production, we could potentially have hemp cannabis replace all of our lithium ions. So Tesla, that could be a hemp car. Literally a
it
hemp
charges and to get let's
Not
put a
only does
little
it charge up to
perspective.
100 times faster,
Yeah.
it has a 400 times
Capacity.
longevity and a 500 times capacity for charging.
So imagine, so let's put it in layman's terms, something that will get people excited. So imagine having a smartphone that could last for an entire week and charges in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Imagine having
Not only that, it didn't have to take a poor child in Africa, mining the fucking lithium and cobalt. It was made sustainably right here in the great USA.
So let's break off, go to LK99.
LK99, yeah. Let's do
What
it.
is LK99? It's a polycrystalline material claimed to be a room temperature ambient pressure superconductor. That means it can conduct electricity without any resistance in everyday settings. So the team that discovered it is based in South Korea out of the Quantum Energy Research Center. Some of the cool things when it comes to potential importance about a LK99, not only being a room temperature, we've seen videos of like what looks like a magnet hovering, but it's you see it like smoking. That's because it's very liquid nitrogen.
Yeah.
It's super, super cold, which also not only requires energy and things like that to get it to that point. This is something that's stable at room temperature. There is supposedly, allegedly he fucked the ostrich.
It's funny because like I told David we were talking about this and he read into it. Didn't you? Like you read through the whole article.
I read through every single article, looked at the graphs and everything, and I hate to break it to you guys, not before it all starts and everything, but we have yet to been able to recreate it. But I do want to dive into on why that is. I still think that there's a lot of potential. But I will say, even in the original articles, it isn't a true superconductor until it's less than like negative 34 degrees Celsius. So it's still technically not an ambient temperature, ambient pressure superconductor, but it's the closest effing thing that we have right now, guys. And I do think
that only ever happened once.
Still never happened once, and it was extremely small.
And they can't
scale, guys.
recreate
it. Was like
it.
a fucking speck. And the reason why I think we can't recreate it is because basically it's so simple. It's basically like lead, sulfur, and like potassium, and they're just kind of cooking it for like 750 degrees Celsius, and boom, there it is. Like that's the way they literally describe it in the article. The problem is the actual crystallization. And the reason I know this is because of the cannabis industry that I was in. But we had to try to crystallize THC. If we were doing hydrocarbon extraction, we were trying to crystallize THC.
Higher percentage. Right?
Yeah,
that's where you
it was almost pure crystalline THC at that point. And that's the whole reason why it was so sought after in the market and everything. And my personal opinion is they are not crystallizing it correctly. They're not using the correct pressures and perfect temperatures that are needed in order to perform the perfect crystalline structure. And you can actually see when you're looking at the picture of the superconductor, I wish we could pop it up for you guys. There is impurities that you can visibly see in the one picture that they have, these little circular black spots. And in my personal opinion, I think those right there are the true semiconductor. I think the rest of it is not actually the true semiconductor. I think those balls, those little spherical balls that you see on the inside of that picture, I personally believe that is the true LK99.
So that's like the reactions that's happening?
Yes.
Dr. David over here is focused on marijuana when he realistically could be the Nobel Peace Prize winner.
Yeah, I mean, and also it doesn't necessarily mean, going back to the LK99, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is a superconductor. Basically what they did is they spun a magnet underneath it, and it moved, which is a property of superconductors. If you put magnets to it,
diamagnetism.
Yes, but that's going at to really what I'm getting at. It could just be diamagnetic, and if it's diamagnetic, I mean, fuck, copper's diamagnetic.
It's a property associated with superconductors, but not exclusive
bunch of different
to
metals and materials.
Yes. So it very well could not be that. And also another thing that is very, very important for this, even though a lot of people would want to use it for like phones and this, that, and the other
kind of normal replacement of batteries. Or?
The big, not necessarily batteries. The biggest, in my opinion, after looking at its actual structural capabilities,
space travel.
People are like, oh, we can use it for new MRIs, and this, that, and the other. Kind of get into that. Nuclear technology. So the biggest problem that we have with nuclear fusion right now.
Oh, cold fusion reaction.
Well, there is such thing as cold fusion reaction.
Completely
Helions working on
different
stuff
spectrum,
like that, right?
Paul.
But the big problem is we need these superconductors in order to produce this, even large scale and small scale fusion and fission reactions. In some cases, we just don't have the proper technology and the proper capabilities to do so. Helion is the closest, in my opinion, right now in relations to actual usable fusion technology. But if they were able to get these superconductors and be able to create much more efficient electromagnets, they can upscale the size of their reactors and make like multiple statewide like size operations, all from something that is maybe 2 to 3 times their current size. Their current projection right now and their current goal is to have something that can fit in like a shipping container and can be put in different sites, cities, or whatever, and be able to power things like that. But with these new superconductor technologies, we not only are the fusion reactions can go a long way, but also the fission reactions can go a long way. We can make stuff a lot more efficient.
Space or smaller space?
Theoretically, this has the potential to make a much smaller space. Tokamak reactors require a lot of superconductors, and that's how we get a lot of our nuclear research. For instance, not a lot of people know this, but all of the plutonium that we have as a human species, we made. We've never mined plutonium because it doesn't exist. Its half-life is over from the time it was created during the Big Bang. So all of our plutonium that is on this planet right now,
Man-made,
we
yeah.
made in reactors. Isn't that like that's crazy?
crazy.
So all
But
the
then
bombs we
Why
made.
do we have some countries that are doing extensive recycling of their nuclear waste, and then we have some that are as
Yes.
absolutely
That's a
using
great
it as
question.
Because they're smart. Because they're absolutely smart. There's multiple different types of reactors. For instance, the CANDU reactor in Canada, I could talk about it for days, but basically it's able to use natural uranium, basically uranium right out of the ground, and it's able to produce a reaction. That has been unheard of. Normally, we have to enrich our uranium for like the modern like stellarator reactors and things like that, tokamaks, things like that. We have to enrich the uranium with uranium-235 and able to create a much more potent, basically,
right.
energy. But with just the regular CANDU reactor with just deuterium and natural uranium, you're able to produce an insane amount of energy, and you never have to shut down.
Yep.
But the best part about it is you're actually able to use the waste from the American reactors and power it in a CANDU reactor. So basically, if we would literally sell our nuclear waste to all these different countries, we would have an almost unlimited supply.
Imagine taking the studies that are going on at the Hadron Particle Collider and essentially advancing it 100 years in less than a year.
Yeah.
With
Aliens
something
are
like
helping
this.
us, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing is the superconductors are in the LHC. If we were to be able to replace these with things like LK99, we would not only be able to make it much more efficient, but we would be able to have the same throughput at a much smaller reaction size scale. You know what I'm saying, guys? Like this
I was
is
watching something the
insane.
other day, and it was
That's
on
huge, yeah.
like the Ohio class destroyer subs and the new class destroyer subs that they have that are nuclear powered within not just the Russian but also the American military, and that they're nuclear powered. But on top of that, they're using salt water, and somehow they have a way now where the salt water helps with the cooling, and then it also somehow they're able to filter it. So there's like a new way of filtration of salt water because of these new Ohio class submarines, and they're able to have filtered salt water while they're out there. And theoretically, all they need is to stop for food. It makes their unlimited amount of oxygen. It makes their unlimited
It's
amount
been
of
around
power.
since the 1980s.
If you're referring
It's
to
been
the
around for a
nuclear
while.
reaction subs, what they're doing is they are there's a lot of different types of isotopes, kind of going full circle to what we were talking about earlier. There's this compound called deuterium, which is a hydrogen molecule that has I believe it's an extra proton in it.
Right.
Might be an extra neutron, but it's basically referred to as heavy water. Actually, I think now that I'm talking out loud, it wouldn't be a proton because that would be a completely different molecule. It would be an extra neutron. The alcohol's getting. Okay, so but deuterium is what is needed for a lot of these reactions because it at a heavy water is able to reflect neutrons and able to bounce them off and shoot them, and basically it makes for a much more stable reaction. And that's the reason why the CANDU reactor is much more efficient, is because it utilizes deuterium. Normal pressurized water reactors is what we have, like the stellarators, tokamaks,
But
things
the
like
way
that.
they made it seem is they were taking like the salt water from right outside.
Yeah, they are. So basically, they're filtering out deuterium. Deuterium, heavy water, is naturally present in salt water. It's a very low concentration, but theoretically, we have an unlimited amount of deuterium on this planet because of the
ocean.
Of the ocean, yes. So the nuclear fission is a very, very, very important thing to look into as a species, because we basically would have an unlimited supply of it.
So that we could have fresh water whenever we want.
Yeah, all we would need is helium. All we would need is a compound called helium-3,
which is running
Is it
out.
very abundant or no?
It is very, very rare, but there is deposits on our own moon. And that's the whole reason why China is trying to get. That is why China is trying to get to the moon. Specifically, is for helium-3. They have came out and said.
Wait, I didn't think we can do that because the Earth is flat.
Shut up, Paul.
I'm kidding.
Holy shit.
That was for you, Connor.
So we're getting closer to the end of the podcast, but last question that I have. Say you have somebody that's really interested in getting into this field, getting into the studies, being able to say what you're saying and learn about everything that you're learning. Where would you start if you could start again?
Would you still take the same field, I guess, or the same path? Is that what you're asking?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, dude.
Oh my gosh, yes.
If I knew about
this,
the
degree that I got to do, like, just put it in perspective, guys. Just due to the degree that I got to do, I was running a GC with an FID,
which is what?
A gas chromatograph. I was running HPLCs, high pressure liquid chromatographs, I was running LCMS triple quads, which is basically an HPLC that then goes to a triple quad mass spec. I was running ICPMSs. I was running these things on a 2-year degree that people don't even get to touch one of them until they're a graduate or in a doctor's program. And I was using all of them before I even left college.
You're
You know what I'm
literally
saying?
the definition of a hipster when it comes to marijuana.
Yeah. Dr. Dave, he's going for his doctorate in marijuana. So
I'm trying.
It's gonna
That's
be...
what I'm going for.
How many doctorates of marijuana exist?
What is it really
So
a
far, there
doctorate
is
of
no one.
marijuana, or is there like subs? Like I am a doctor.
There is a
biology,
master.
botany, or
There is
whatever.
a master of science in cannabis, and that is what I'm going for.
Okay.
But as far as I know, there's not a specific doctorate degree for cannabis specifically.
Do you think
there are a lot of?
Do you think eventually you're going to become a professor of?
But
Technically, I was. Technically,
Yeah,
I was a substitute teacher for the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Unfortunately, they didn't ever need me, but I was on their payroll and everything, and so I technically was a substitute teacher for the Cleveland School of Cannabis.
Do you think most of the students and the reason why you tested high is because they were high?
does it help to study high when you're high and like pass a test when you're high? Like
This
So I
is
will say there
stupid
is
question.
there
part of
is a
this.
lot
High
of there is a
question.
lot of research recently that's been going in for ADHD in cannabis, and there is a lot of people that I know that consume cannabis regularly, show up to test high, and they ace every single test.
so.
But I also think that there's a lot of different factors to that. So
When
it
you
could
go
just be just
for-
for them.
when you go for your PhD in this field, everyone has to do like a thesis. Have you ever thought about like what your thesis will be on?
Yes,
in
I
this
thought
field?
a lot about my my doctoral thesis and the thesis that I'm gonna have to do for my master's program and things like that. My master's program is going to be more genetics focused, but my doctoral thesis, I don't know, man. I might end up going a completely different route, and start going more nuclear, something like that.
with marijuana.
No, not more so with analytical testing.
About to
Okay.
show Hiroshima how it is to get high. No.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily.
Boom!
That. I just want
Everyone's stoned.
a more.
Infiltrate.
I want clean energy. That's what
Yeah.
I'm really about.
Yeah. No.
Sustainable clean energy.
'Cause
I was going to say
theoretically,
that's exactly
we will
where
be
you should
not just
go.
we'll have the hemp, which can make ropes and oils and all this stuff that we have. We can make fuel potentially. It's like the plant that can solve all the problems in a sense. So
Yeah.
is that something like you'd go
No,
for?
there actually is. Like for instance, the hemp graphene battery. That potentially right there could solve the biggest problem right now that we have with energy consumption is that we have no fucking way to store it.
Right?
Yeah, we have no way to store it. We
Yeah,
can
nickel
produce energy
hydride,
like that, guys.
lithium
We just don't
high.
have any way to store it.
Yeah, lithium ion, nickel hydride, and then there's a few other alternatives, but lithium ion
There
right
is a
now
lot of
is
research
one of the
with some
betters.
sulfur batteries that are going on right now,
Yeah.
things like that are very promising. But yeah, so far in my opinion, from what I've seen with the actual overall,
So, I guess we'll end it with this one question. Everyone dreams and hopes that like, hey, we're gonna get out of this, prohibition of not just the stigma around marijuana, but the
20
restrictions
years.
of us. Yeah, how long do you think it'll be until we're allowed to fully not just like consume as a recreational like alcohol or anything else that we have, but like
It's sort of
start
seemed like
really
taking
diving
Advil.
into testing of this for all
Yeah.
spectrums to help us.
so the biggest problem is going to have to do with the federal government. And unfortunately, they make way too much money off of cannabis prohibition. I mean, for fuck's sakes, guys, it's legal in DC to consume cannabis. I was just there a couple weeks ago. I saw people smoking weed outside.
Senators, congressmen.
No, outside fucking the Senate and shit like that. But it is still federally illegal, and I kind of find it very, very hypocritical for them to be able to do that. And they're the ones that are also the ones saying like, no, we want to keep it illegal and don't want to reschedule it. But
So we have
Go
a
on.
mom in the questions right now. She's asking, does David have any thoughts on THC and CBD when it comes to breastfeeding?
yes, so I will say this is could potentially upset a lot of individuals. I will say that there has been people that I have met that consumed during their pregnancies. One of the individuals that I met, she had 3 doctors and a lawyer as her kids, and she consumed during all of her pregnancies. But I will say this, CBD attacks multiple, I'm sorry, not multiple, but fast replicating cells. That's one of the reasons why it is so good for cancer and things like that, is because it basically stops the ultra quick replication of cells.
So it's
We
not
have
good for
proven that.
breastfeeding.
This
but
is-
yeah. Okay.
We don't know. And I think that
And does it transmit to the baby then?
absolutely,
Yeah.
we have proven that it goes through the blood-brain barrier and it goes through and is able to go through the placenta and affect your baby
What
like
about
that.
into like the breast milk as well itself?
It does go into your breast milk. It again, going back to the fact that it is very fat loving. It is lipophilic. It does go into your breast milk. But again, I think that there's a lot of research that needs to be done with it because it helps so much with these pregnancy problems. For instance, there is conditions where
Postpartum
these
and
mothers
things like
physically
that.
cannot eat, and also that too. But
Yeah.
at that point, once the baby's out of you, you can always bottle feed. You don't have to at that point. There's nothing necessarily forcing you to breastfeed at that point. There's different options. If you really truly needed it as a medicine at that point, you could. But I will say, they're look into your research. I'm also look into, have to realize, guys, if you consume cannabis, a lot of states they will, and CPS especially, they will take your baby still. So definitely look into that before doing this. But there is a lot of research with menstruation and cannabis, and there's also a little bit of research going on right now of pregnancy pains and things like that, and how cannabis could potentially help. Here's the whole thing: if you're physically not able to eat at all and you're just constantly puking all day, and this medicine is able to get you to eat and able to get nutrients to your baby, in my opinion, and nothing else is working, in my personal opinion, for that specific instance, it might be something to look into for your child. But you also have to realize that that mother could potentially have her child taken away once it is born because she consumed cannabis the entire time.
And
It
they
is
deem that still a level 1 drug.
it is still a Schedule 1 drug, guys. It is more Schedule 8. To put it in perspective, guys, you can buy meth right now at going to a doctor. You can get prescribed methamphetamine.
Yeah.
Not Adderall. I'm not talking about Adderall. I'm talking about the true methamphetamine. It is still a drug that they can prescribe to you. They try not to because of the whole meth problem and things like that. They try to do Adderall, Vyvanse, things like that. But you still can get methamphetamine.
Wow.
So if that's still illegal and that's still okay, but cannabis isn't okay, I don't know, man.
And one's naturally grown from the ground, and one's you've made
and
synthetically.
there, you can still consume your ADHD medications while pregnant in some cases.
Wow.
Now, has there? And there's been, I'm
So,
pretty sure there's been a lot of studies on that though, and they haven't ever come out and said it's caused complications or problems with the child while you're taking a speed theoretically while you're during your
Well, it
pregnancy.
definitely has. There's definitely been a lot of studies in regards to that because it's one of, I would
I mean, is
imagine
it
when it comes to
positive, is it
Adderall,
negative?
Ritalin, things like that.
Is this child coming out and going to be like the Flash and he's just fucking zooting everywhere?
They have had people who are addicted to the drugs. They have had cases where they've had the stereotypical back in the day they had the crack babies and everything.
The crack babies,
and they have had individuals that have had specific cases, but that's one of those things that they not really in the limelight because they're more quote unquote specific cases, and things like that. And so
I keep wanting to end this podcast because we've gone past time, but at the same time, this is the most fascinating conversation I've had in so long.
This is great. I'm getting to talk about cannabis. I'm getting to talk about nuclear reactors and semiconductors, and I hope you guys have me on in the future.
Absolutely.
Really
Well, the last time I was up in Ohio, you and I sat in the kitchen for a little bit talking about this, and I was like, fuck, I need you to talk about this on the podcast. I was like, this is beyond fascinating. All right, well, everyone, thank you so much for joining the podcast. We had a lot of people in the chat. You be sure to tune in every single Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when we go live on Twitch. We are looking at possibly hopping on Kick and other platforms for streaming. You can find this podcast wherever podcasts can be found every single Monday at 6 a.m. So it's a nice little podcast to start your week before you get to work while you're driving.
Because of you guys, we do this because of you. So like, comment, share. Tell your friends about us. Go to our merch site, get some cool merch. We're working on new stuff and updating it all the time. And if you want to see David back onto the podcast again, let us know. You
guys want to talk about nuclear reactors? Please have me back on. Please have me back on.
I think
he's the brains of the family.
Next week,
regardless, we might have to get him back on here.
Yeah, I'm thinking next week because I do want to get into the nuclear reactor side of talking, especially going deep diving into LK99 because I'm sure in the following week there's gonna be something that happens.
There's gonna be big stuff that's coming in.
Yeah,
it's brand new, guys.
Everyone's looking at it right now, and everyone's criticizing
it's gonna be under intense scrutiny for the weeks to come. It'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah. So
with that being said,
thanks for listening.
Thank you so much.
Peace.